I think it's pretty obvious by now that I'm a big fan of Mario Kart as a whole, but I'm definitely a bigger fan of some games more than others. I really can't measure how much time I spent on DS or Wii. 8 Deluxe looks surprisingly tame, and I'm not telling you guys how much I put into Tour, but all around I think I've had my fair share playing all of these games. However, there's one game that I've barely touched, that I've only played for the first time a few years ago, and that's Mario Kart Super Circuit. Now, I would defend Super Mario Kart in court, and be the prosecutor against 64, but if I passed by Super Circuit in the hallway, I'd give him that awkward smile and nod. It's not because I don't like it, I'm just not very acquainted with it. I think the biggest reason why is that, being a younger Mario Kart fan, this game was before my time. If you showed me a Game Boy Advance as a kid, I'd be thinking that's the 1DS, and its representation in Mario Karts that I actually played sure didn't leave the best impression. They're not that bad, but if I had the choice between racing in a shopping mall or an active volcano, or this, like, could you really blame me? And for the longest time, I just wasn't interested in the game where every race course is like that, and that the game itself looks like this. I mean, I can't play this game, where's the graphics? But as I grew older and saw more of Super Circuit from videos online, I was finally curious enough and wanted to try it firsthand. And so I did, thanks to my lawful purchase of a Game Boy Advance. And this was the moment where I would finally develop something with this new Mario Kart experience. Except not really, because I just thought it was okay. Yeah, what I saw was essentially what I got. Frustratingly aged controls and more rudimentary gameplay. But it had its charms with its more lively and creative courses. It was hard to hate, but also hard to like. I was in about the same place where I'd started, but at least I could confirm my stance. Well, that's what I thought, but as I've done deep dives into more Mario Kart games, the more I felt like my experience with Super Circuit was very surface level. I couldn't really go that far from how little I played it, so I definitely had to play more, so that my thoughts on the game are more concrete. And let me tell you, what went from the most straightforward conclusion of just saying it's okay, became a real roller coaster of emotions. Did I like it? Did I hate it? Did I still feel indifferent? The answer changed so much the more and more I played it, but at the end of it all, I think I now have a newfound appreciation for Super Circuit, and I want to share with you all my thought process on how I grew to like this game. So for this review, I thought it'd be interesting to sort of review this game first based on my early impressions, and then show how over time I've developed my more refined take on the game. So hopefully for those who are also indifferent, you'll be willing to give Super Circuit another chance, because trust me, it's definitely worth one. Super Circuit has some pretty interesting development, because rather than being in the hands of the usual Mario Kart team, Nintendo passed this game over to Intelligent Systems. I guess they had their hands full with the Nintendo shit cube. While their main thing is Fire Emblem, they also seem to be who Nintendo gives all of the Scrimlo Bimblo Mario series. So giving them this smaller scale Mario Kart makes sense. And when I mean small scale, I mean that this is also the first handheld Mario Kart. It's revolutionary. How many world records do you think were achieved while sitting on the pooper? It also means there's going to be a lot of limitations at play, but from what I've seen, Intelligent Systems always seems to make the best out of whatever rusty brick they're working with. And with that in mind, the amount of stuff they crammed in this little thing is actually really impressive, even if some compromises had to be made. It must have felt like such an uphill task to be the next installment of a really popular series on a console greatly inferior to the one that the previous game was on, but I think they pulled it off. It has some surprisingly high reviews, and it's only under the Pokemon games as the best-selling GBA title. This made me curious if the marketing had anything to do with its success, so I looked into the commercials of this game. What the hell? I completely forgot how unhinged these old commercials are. Japan seems innocent, just some cute animations, but America and Europe got a little more creative, I'll say that. Oh shit, it's Super Mario in real life. Oh, there goes Toad. He's just dead, he's gone. What? Oh no, stop. What kind of film was this? Oh my god. That wasn't even Mario Kart, that was a hit and run. Okay, just some old guys playing Super Circuit. Me and the boys in retirement.
Super Circuit on Game Boy Advance.
Oh my god, that's diabolical. That's the most action his dick has gotten in years. Alright, that's enough. I think it's time to start the review. Okay, one more.
Mario Kart Super Circuit on Game Boy Advance.
What the Right off the bat, I gotta say, this game has the sauce. That rock and roll opening gets me hyped up every time. The menus feel so animated. You got selected icons pulsating. The background has multiple layers moving around. The text does a little bounce every now and then. And I love how when you select your character, they drive off screen and crash into all the icons. Even the little things they just programmed in for funsies. Like you can press the shoulder buttons to jump or launch a shell during the character select. Already it's getting some style points. But how well does it do beyond that? First, let's look at the character roster. Let's see who who made the cut from 64 and what new faces we have. It's the same. I mean, I can't complain too much when I thought the 64 roster was already pretty solid, but it would be nice to see at least one new addition. And no, Mystery Man doesn't count. One time I selected random and it gave me Donkey Kong, so I never did that again. As per usual, they each have their own weight classes with their different strengths and weaknesses, but the heavies just feel really bad to me. It's probably because I'm more attuned to the mediums and lightweights, and they just feel so drastically different. The lightweights are enjoyable with their high acceleration, but I can only tolerate bumper cars for so long. In a game that asks for precision, I feel like my safest bet in Super Circuit is to just play as Mario. Luigi has the same stats, but I don't know, I just fuck with Mario more. Especially when Luigi sounds like this. Everyone's voice went through some slight changes, from Yoshi sounding more like Josh than Yoshi, to Wario sounding more like he did in Mario Party. Some of them do sound kind of weird, but in an oddly charming way. As you can tell by how it's presented, the racing gameplay is very much like Super Mario Kart. Due to the unorthodox nature of the parallax scrolling fake 3D environment, the controls aren't going to feel as smooth as if they were in a legitimate 3D space. I've said this for Super Mario Kart, and the same applies here. The controls are definitely something that takes some time getting comfortable with. It's one of the more slippery Mario Karts for sure. You're gonna try to drift and end up playing in the grass. This is one of the main things that put me off from Super Circuit at first. I kept running into walls and falling into pits, and I cried and I shit myself. But if I'm here, I kinda have no choice but to adapt to the slipperiness. If I grew to like how Super Mario Kart felt, I bet I can do the same with Super Circuit. A racing game of this age is not something you'll adapt to easily, so this one's definitely gonna take a lot of training. Oh, fuck. Shit. There is one thing about the controls in this game that I took way too long to find out about. There's actually mini turbos here. Kinda. Normally, both before and after Super Circuit, you would shift the stick left and right while drifting to generate a boost after letting go of the drift. But here it's kinda weird. You have to hold a drift down and commit to that direction for roughly 1 second, and then once you let go, you get a little burst of speed. Before I knew this, I would occasionally see the poof come out of my cart and be like, fuck was that? Does Mario have gas?
It's a mushroom, it's gonna give me the poo-poos.
It's because I wouldn't expect this game to have drift boosts, and it's hard to notice the small burst of speed in this environment. It would have helped if it was less subtle than it is. There should be some visual feedback while you're drifting instead of just when the boost is pulled off. Even the E's from 64 would have done the job, but once you figure out it exists, it's a good addition to your moveset. There's also another interesting mechanic with the driving. When you hit certain obstacles, there'll be a bit of a delay before you spin out. At first it felt kinda awkward, but I found out you can use this small window to pull the brakes and you can save yourself from crashing. I find it to be a unique way to test your reaction time, and is good at preventing your momentum from getting completely killed. And how about the items? What wacky and iconic additions to the item roster does Super Circuit bring? It's the same. Well, that's not true. They removed some. But honestly, the items they chose to remove from 64 are fair. Stuff like golden mushrooms and banana bunches would have felt overboard for these smaller scale courses. And thankfully, some of the best additions from 64 like the triple shells, the boo, and the blue shell are here safe and sound. Although they made the boo steal coins from you now, and that pisses me off, but we'll get into why later. I will say though, the item balancing in this game is kinda whack. It's not uncommon to get a star in 3rd or even 2nd place. I'm not complaining though. It makes it easier for me to catch back up and perform some crazy cuts around the racetrack. I still would have liked to see any new ideas for items, because so far the game is not feeling like it's any big step forward in the series like 64 was from Super Mario Kart. That being said, there are some improved mechanics that actually do feel like a step in the right direction. Like the red shells don't suck ass. When you throw one, instead of it ending it all immediately, they hunt down whoever's in front of them like a pit bull. This is because they programmed it where they'll follow a path in the middle of the road, and then hone in on a target once they approach it. And this is how red shells will be programmed going forward in the series. They don't work perfectly here, they might cut corners too tightly and hit a wall, but this game deserves credit for shaping red shells as eventually one of the most reliable items, with its highly improved pathfinding. And you might think this will create a problem on the other end, where now that red shells have more confidence, you'll be getting hit by them a lot more frequently by the other racers. But Super Circuit is also the first game that warns you about oncoming items, although in a pretty different way here than how they would do it later. If a CPU fires a red shell at you, the shell will actually linger behind you for a few seconds before going in for the kill. It's a bit anxiety-inducing, it's like it's stretching out your demise. This gives you a window to pull out any defense that you may have, and it's such a welcoming mechanic that allows you to prepare for attacks at the right moment. The really frustrating part is that sometimes the red shells don't even hesitate, so I end up feeling insecure and just hold a banana behind behind me the entire race, and it just doesn't feel good constantly having a finger down on the L button, when the intention of this mechanic is so I don't have to do that. It's a shame because red shells as a whole have great performance here, they just occasionally get too ahead of themselves. But you know what really concerns me? The computer players. You guys probably already know how I felt about the CPUs in the previous 2 Mario Kart games. In Super Mario Kart, they alone tampered with what could have been a pretty good game, and in 64, they turned the single player from the 5th layer of hell to the 8th. So when Super Circuit is being as ship-shape as it is now, it makes me worry that they'll once again drop the ball thanks to these creatures. But to my surprise, and hang on to your britches, I don't think you're ready to hear this, the computer players in this game are normal, like relatively fine. When you get ahead of an opponent, you can stay ahead of him, and if you're good enough at the game, you can get even further ahead of him. The only way they can catch back up to you is either by your own errors or if they use one of their items, so they're just like a normal racer. Say it ain't so. And also, yeah, they legitimately use items from item boxes, instead of DK Jr. using Game Shark to give him infinite bananas. I still think it's pretty annoying how they can bonk you off course, but that's just how collisions work, not much you can really do there. I gotta say, I am impressed. Intelligent Systems figured out how to create strong competition in a racing game without needing to create CPUs that cyberbully me. So thanks to that, I think the core gameplay of Super Circuit is pretty solid. Maybe not as great or as refined as it would be in later games. There's still some holes you can spot every now and then, like this. Jesus Christ, they really brought that back. Maybe you guys are actually washed, I don't know. But it's a big step from that, so I'll take what I can get. Outside of Grand Prix, you have time trials, self-explanatory, and quick run, which allows you to easily play whatever course you have unlocked. Essentially the first time you can play versus mode by yourself, which is pretty nice. Single player is the only way I've experienced this game, because while this also has multiplayer with up to 4 people, I think it's obvious why I could never try that out. Well, for one, if I ever asked my siblings if they wanted to play Mario Kart and they said, sure, which one? Double Dash? 8 Deluxe? And then I said, Super Circuit.
What the fuck?
And 2, even if we wanted to, it's not the easiest to set up. To play it organically, we would each need a Game Boy Advance and hook them up with some link cables. And even after all that equipment and setup, if only one of you has a copy of the game, you'll be left with only sticks and mud to play with. The most accessible way of doing multiplayer, at least what he approves of, is by playing Super Circuit in the GBA collection for the NSO expansion pass. But I don't know, I can't really convince anyone to put down some money for some quick Super Circuit matches. From the looks of it though, I don't think I'm missing out on that much. It just seems like multiplayer Mario Kart, a decently fun time, and that's about it. I have no doubt that back in the day, this must have felt really magical to play Mario Kart with your friends in such a convenient way. But in the modern day, I think it's been outclassed as the road trip game, just from being the most mechanically basic of its type. This also means I won't be able to have hands-on experience with the battle mode, but again, just by looking at it, I don't think I'm missing out. It looks more or less like Super Mario Kart's battle. It's functional. The battle stages seem to be more interesting, though they still haven't figured out how to give these good names, but I'll give it this. It doesn't make me mad like Mario Kart World's battle mode. In fact, it still makes me mad. How are they still fucking this up? You worked on this shit for 8 years? Did you need a ninth to realize that making a battle arena a giant fucking slope was a bad idea? What do you mean Chain Chomp Desert? What did you do to him? I won't have the multiplayer count toward my review all that much since I wasn't able to try it out, but if I did, I imagine it wouldn't make much of a difference anyways. It seems harmless. In the modern day, this is primarily a single player experience. And so far, I don't appear to have many gripes with it. However, there is something else about Super Circuit that kinda puts me off. It's the fact that it's a Game Boy Advance game, and if I'm gonna be transparent, I do not care for the Game Boy Advance. Now, I do have a soft spot toward older consoles, specifically the Super Nintendo and the N64, and it's because both the standards at the time and the console's limitations that create this sort of minimalist appeal, with the Super Nintendo style having more refined pixel art and vintage sound chip, and the N64 with its low poly so ugly it's cute appeal. However, the quirks of the Game Boy Advance tend to actually make me like the games on it less. I find the graphic style of these games to be very hit or miss. It should be right up my alley. It's pixel art, it's retro, but it's the color scheme that makes or breaks it for me, and a good amount of GBA games look kinda yucky. Before the SP model, the console had a glaring flaw with not having a backlight. The screen would be like looking through a FNAF security camera. So to accommodate for this, the games made during this time had the graphics be very bright and saturated, which was a smart idea to work around the hardware at the time, but when it's on newer devices with normal lighting, it looks a bit odd. Some cases like the Kirby games and WarioWare actually look pretty nice on the console. While the Mario Advance games, and do I have the balls to say Superstar Saga, don't. It really depends from game to game, but Super Circuit, being one of its earliest titles, is a bit of a miss. I also think the jump to 32 bits made them a bit too excited, and so they went and made stuff like this. Some of this game's character sprites look crazy, and I don't know if they're so bad it's good, or if they wrap back around to just being weird. But in reality, it's really a nitpick. The color tones and sprites don't really bother me that much in the grand scheme of things. It had to look like this, and I can accept that and move on. It is hard to say that for the audio though, oh my lord. The audio style of the GBA is probably the worst part about it. Most of the time, the music is composed of these super compressed samples of instruments. It's like listening to a marching band through a McDonald's drive-thru speaker. Don't even get me started when they use brass. They play the Pokemon Emerald trumpets when you enter Hell. Even when they use the more basic chiptune beeps and boops sounds, it still doesn't sound well to me. I have heard a good amount of bangers that come out of GBA games, but it's usually in spite of sounding like the GBA. And that about sums up my thoughts on the music of Super Circuit. To be honest, I think out of the main Mario Kart games, this might have the weakest soundtrack. I say main Mario Kart games because have you listened to the first Mario Kart Arcade's music? Of course you haven't. And don't. Of course it has some standouts. I really like Sky Garden and Cheeseland, and Bowser Castle slaps so hard I don't mind that it plays on 4 different tracks. Everything else though ranges from pretty good to meh, and Mario Kart soundtracks have a higher standard than that. 9 times out of 10 the next song should make me go, oh hell yeah, it's this one. But with Super Circuit it's more like, oh it's this one. Alright, the Rainbow Road music about sums up the whole thing because the music is pretty good, it's a banger, but Rainbow Road music is typically a lot more than this. They tend to give you a Ratatouille flashback moment, and this probably does for some people, definitely not me. I just feel low-key good vibes from this and that's about it. It's a good soundtrack on its own for sure, but for Mario Kart standards it kind of falls behind. And a big part of that is due to how music is orchestrated on this hardware. Because I don't really mess with the Game Boy Advance in general, some of the icks I have with it carry on over to Super Circuit, and it holds back my enjoyment a little bit. But if that's really the most unpleasant part to me, just the art and sound being not to my taste, that should be a testament to how few problems I have with the actual gameplay. When I played the first 2 games, I felt like Shiggy hated me specifically, so for the 3rd game to play as relatively normal as it does, I don't really mind that. This is just a simple Mario Karting experience. Here's the interesting part though, there's still a whole lot of game we haven't covered yet, and it's not something I'd call simple. So about the race courses in this game, there are 40 of them. When I said they crammed in a lot of stuff in this tiny cartridge, I was not kidding. There's once again 4 courses in each cup, with the new Lightning Cup squeezed in the middle. It's an impressive number for sure, but it's also a quantity over quality type of deal. I had a good time with a handful of these, but the majority of them I thought were decent, and you always gotta have one of those in every game. But even though the 2D restrictions led to me not being a huge fan of the actual layouts, it allowed them to get really creative with the theming. We got a land of cheese and mice, riding on ribbons and around a bunch of presents, a tropical lake with an active volcano, a beanstalk garden in the clouds, the list goes on. Well, not for long. Because on the other hand, there are some repeated themes like beaches, jungles, circuits, and spooky boardwalks. Thankfully, they do a good job at giving them their own identity. It's better than just saying, this is beach, but 2. I think I have the same feelings towards Super Circus tracks as I did with Super Mario Kart. I understand and accept the limitations of this kind of environment, and for what they are, they're a good time, and they totally get more slack than they deserve. Playing these for myself really helped heal the bias I had against them when I played them as retro tracks, because again, when this is up against these, it's hard to feel impressed. You'll appreciate them more in the context of their original game. But hold on a second, I said there were 40 courses. And if I know anything about math, 5 cups times 4 in each is 20. Well, funny that I mentioned the Super Mario Kart courses because they ported all 20 tracks from that game into here as extra tracks. Nonchalantly drops a whole second game, refuses to elaborate. With Super Circuit practically remaking every course from a previous game, you could argue that this was the first game to have retro tracks instead of DS. But that's a debate you have when you're really bored and I have school tomorrow. This game is far healthier in unlockable content than 64 was. Wasn't that a joke? They not only bothered to lock the special cup this time around, but there's another 5 extra cups to unlock as well. That seems exciting, but you might be wondering how you unlock them, because even I didn't know how for the longest time. Well, it's all about the money. Forgot to mention, but coins are back and more relevant than ever. In order to unlock an extra cup, you need to get first place in its corresponding Super Circuit Cup while getting at least a collective 100 coins among the courses. So that means you need to get at least 25 coins in each, and depending on how much you get in one course, you'll then move the goalpost for yourself in the next. It adds an interesting layer of strategy to the Grand Prix. For a novice player like myself, let me tell you, this is pretty difficult to achieve. I used to get the gold trophy despite swerving around the road like a maniac, but now the game is asking for a lot more accuracy. And I gotta say, I respect this game for offering such a unique challenge that no game since has offered. Oh, what I don't respect is how they made it shitty. For some odd reason, you can't unlock the extra cup the first time through. You need to get the gold trophy for the Super Circuit Cup and then do it again with 100 coins in order to unlock the extra cup. It's not that bad, but did make me scratch my head a bit. What really pissed me off is that when I did it a second time, hello? My donut planes won. I did it a third and even a fourth time and nothing. It was driving me up the walls. So I had to look it up and everyone was just saying stuff I was already doing. Not even the AI overview helped, and that's always correct. Until finally someone on Discord told me that I needed to beat the special cup before I could unlock the extra cups. So thank you, person on Discord. I guess they wanted you to play the entirety of Super Circuit before getting to the Super Mario Kart stuff, but maybe being less cryptic about it would have helped. I get why they wanted to keep these extra tracks a secret, but when you have multiple hidden requirements and aren't clear about it, it just leads to unnecessary confusion and frustration. See, with the unlocking method already being this big, daunting task, I can just suck it up and get good at the game. But even when I do get good, the game can be like, nuh-uh, doesn't count. And also, yeah, about the boo stealing your coins, now you know why that pisses me off. And even when you actually unlock them, the game is really stingy about it because it only unlocks the cup in that speed class. In later games, when you win a cup in 150cc, it would also count as a win for those lower speeds. It makes sense because if you've proven yourself on a high difficulty level, you wouldn't need to prove yourself on lower difficulties. Super Circuit, however, is like, you may have proved yourself as an expert, but can you prove yourself as a preschooler? So in order to complete Super Circuit and have the extra cups on every speed, you need to beat each of these 5 cups 6 times, even if you ignore 50cc, because I can see the average player switching between 100 and 150 depending on their mood. That's still 4 times each. What could have been a difficult but straightforward challenge becomes needlessly complicated and repetitive. I do understand why the unlock method is the way that it is, and in isolation these sound like minor inconveniences, but it's the fact that it means throwing all that hard work of getting those coins in the dumpster, and that's likely going to happen if you're someone like me who has only heard how to unlock these by word of mouth. God forbid if you were a child back in 2001 and had way less help on the internet. But eventually, after all that confusion, I could finally play those SNES courses I fought so hard to race on. And, well...
Wow, look at the moon, guys. Can we appreciate the moon in Minecraft?
These are bad. They're not good. And it's not because I don't like SNES tracks. Some of my friends are SNES tracks. It's that they made them all worse. Almost every track has something missing, whether that be boost panels, various hazards like thwomps or multi-moles. And because there's no feather in this game, they either find a weird workaround to make those shortcuts still possible, or they just don't bother. The backgrounds of these courses are also hand-me-downs from the base game. For example, Vanilla Lake has the same background and tile assets as Snowland. It fits perfectly fine when like Koopa Beach reuses stuff from Shy Guy Beach. But with tracks like Choco Island, they don't have a theme that exactly fits it, so they just use the closest thing they have, which is Sunset Wilds, and it just looks so off. They didn't do all of this just out of laziness, more so they were kinda running low on space. They already had 20 courses in the base game, and now they were trying to cram in another 20 in this itty bitty thing. So some parts had to be either thrown out or recycled in order to fit them in here. So great, you managed to fit 40 whole racetracks in this game. It's a record they would keep for a long time. But at what cost? How good of a flex is that when half of them are stripped down versions of tracks that you can play in a different game? And as you can imagine, the music sucks too. Some of them I genuinely cannot listen to. I'm wondering if it was even worth putting these in here, because yeah, it gives you more stuff to do, but if this wad of mediocrity is what I'm working for, why should I even bother? All that elbow grease, all that confusion, all that frustration, and for what? So I can play a violently trembling Vanilla Lake 1? I think I got like halfway through the extra tracks, and at that moment I was just done. I was ready to wrap up my time with Super Circuit, and it left me with a very bad taste in my mouth. For a while, I thought I was gonna kinda like it, but near the end of that whole grind, I was a lot more mixed and uneasy about the game. Part of me thought it was, dare I say, a hidden gem, but another part of me thought that it was just a rock, and it should stay hidden. So several months have passed since I last played it. My Mario Kart 64 review just came out, and Super Circuit is naturally next on the block, and I'm like, what am I gonna do here? I have not been this split on a game in a really long time. So to help myself out, I did what most people do when they need help formulating an opinion on something. Steal opinions from YouTubers.
Yeah, sure, it does make a bad first impression, but stick with it and you'll end up with one of the best Mario Kart experiences out there.
So yeah, my love for this game is purely nostalgic. Looking at it critically, it's fine, it's just nothing special. So now I have to compare it to—
Wait, Goomba says it's peak, but Scott says it's not. Who do I believe? But then I remembered, I'm the YouTuber. It's now my role to manipulate a generation of gamers. And if I'm gonna do that, I feel like I can't just say it's mid and call it a day. I have to be more thorough than that. I need to somehow find my way toward a more solid stance on Mario Kart Super Circuit. And the solution was quite simple actually. All this game needed was to be given another chance. And me not being an idiot. It was the start of my summer vacation, so for the first couple of days I just wanted to take it easy, just kick back and play some games. And I thought I could play some more Super Circuit, this time with my video game critic brain turned off. I'm just here to have some fun. So I downloaded the game on my 3DS so I could play it in my comfy bed. How did I do that if the eShop is down, you ask? I can't say because I see him in the corner. It comes down to those who knows. And something felt different this play session because I was actually having a lot of fun. I remembered being so bothered by how difficult the game felt to control, and here I am pulling off these slick turns and getting spikes of serotonin. What changed between then and now was obvious. I am now playing this on a handheld device. That's an evolution of the game's original hardware. And before that, I was playing Super Circuit bloated up on an LG monitor with a USB Xbox controller. Huh. I wonder why the game felt weird. This really goes to show that if you're going to critique a game, you should really play it as authentically as you can. And if you can't, you really need to put into consideration that you're playing it on a platform that it was never intended to be on. Now, of course, the 3DS wasn't the original platform, but one of these is definitely closer to a Game Boy Advance than the other. So, big surprise, the game felt a lot more comfortable once I played it on a Nintendo handheld. I should note that I don't have a 3DS capture card, so the footage you're seeing is the monitor setup, so I want it to be known that I don't normally suck this much. And from this point, I felt a lot more confident in getting better at the game. Because I previously played this on a very unusual platform, the best I could possibly do is good enough. I was fighting for my life getting those extra cups, but now the challenge felt a lot more manageable, and so I kept trucking along, recollecting the gold trophies in every cup, and sometime during that, some switch inside me flipped. Look, the game's controls have definitely aged, but with enough practice, and you start to adapt to it more and more, this game becomes a joyride. Hitting the long drifts and getting that burst of speed, fire hopping to make those smaller cuts in the road, pulling some exhilarating shortcuts and landing back on the ground in one piece. Thanks to the red and blue shells being toned down in this game, you get that feeling of just going and going without any stops, and breaking the rules of the road beautifully. Okay, I'm definitely gassing this up too much, it's not cinema, but it feels really good in the moment. And the game is great at giving you feedback by introducing ranks to the Grand Prix Cups. Even if you technically get first, the game will let you know that you still kinda suck. Come back and talk to us once you get an A. You get higher grades based on not only your points from what position you end the race in, but also your time on each course. So in order to get the highest rank, the triple star, you not only need to get first place across the board, you have to play near perfect. I will say, getting the triple star ranks is maybe a bit too bullshit. Like if you make a single mistake or rough turn, you might as well restart. But somehow I actually got one. I have no idea how the fuck I did that. And it was with the Xbox controller. I think that single-handedly beats all the skill issue allegations. I think aiming for the highest ranks is a bit too much for my taste, but the fact that the game offers such a challenge, combined with how you unlock the extra cups, really makes you realize that Super Circuit might be the hardest Mario Kart game, and something about that's really cool to me. But even as I grew to like the controls, I still had a pretty sour outlook on the extra tracks, that with how invigorating it is to win the cups while getting as many coins as you can, this being your reward from all that still felt like a spin in the face. I was still pretty iffy on that. However, something more recent had made me shift my perspective. So, Mario Kart World, you know, the game that hates Super Circuit. I made a whole video about this, but in case you need a refresher, I think the free roam mode is truly something special. I found the hate and criticism against its easygoing nature to be expected given the game's controversies, but not entirely fair. Yeah, there's all these missions, block panels, badges and medals, and all you get for finding them is a lousy sticker, like you pass a test in school. But I was firm in the belief that it's not about what the game gives you at the end, it's about the process of exploring this vast world, experiencing some fun events from the P-switches, and grabbing some hard-to-reach collectibles by doing some trickier tech. The reward isn't the sticker, it's merely a symbol of what you've done. The actual reward is the new things that you've experienced, and the new skills that you've obtained in the process. I'll look at the sunset and smile once more people realize this about free roam. But yeah, it's not happening. But as I was making that video and got deeper into this whole intrinsic versus extrinsic rewards debate, I started to realize this sounds kind of familiar. A very lengthy and challenging journey with the game giving you a crummy reward. It is pretty lame how your reward for going the extra mile is getting to play inferior Super Nintendo tracks, but was trying to perfect your lines to grab all those coins not exciting? And did it not help me grow as a better go-karter? It was admittedly a stressful yet personally fulfilling experience, and I think it's worth unlocking the extra tracks just for that. These might be underwhelming as race courses, but they serve a lot better as a symbol of your skills. I mean, the game thinks you're such hot shit, they practically give you a whole other game. That'll make you feel proud of yourself no matter how mediocre the actual tracks are. I still think that the extra tracks themselves are a glaring flaw of the game, but I've at least grown to greatly appreciate the process. So there were many factors in my second playthrough that made me like the game a lot more. From playing the game more authentically, getting better at the driving, to understanding that the highly fulfilling journey greatly outweighs the disappointing destination. And with all that said and done, I think I finally have a concrete stance on Mario Kart Super Circuit. It's pretty fucking good. It took a long while for me to get to this point, but this game is definitely worth the patience. Just lock in, start practicing your turns and bunny hops, and you'll get some really satisfying results. I wouldn't go as far to say it's one of the best Mario Kart games, but it definitely went up a good amount of points in my head. But before I finalize my thoughts, we still need to get further into one more part about the game, the individual race courses. That's right, it's finally time for the ranking part. Now, we have a bit of an interesting case here, as you can see. I've seen most people who've done Super Circuit tier lists just dismiss the extra tracks, since most people are there for the main Super Circuit courses. However, I want to be that guy. I thought it would be more ambitious if we did a full 40 track ranking, but once I started actually putting it into execution, it didn't feel right. It just felt like it had weird pacing, going between a course that I actually give a shit about to a course I don't. And it would be weird for those who just want to hear about the Super Circuit courses, and the video would have been longer than what I would have liked. So how about this? We'll just go over the Super Circuit tracks today, and maybe I can have the extra track ranking be my 8,000 subscriber special. Not actually, you can just tell me if you want to see it and I'll do it. I just think it'd be funny if it was a subscriber special. Sounds boring, but trust me, I have some real, passionate, choice words for some of these guys. We'll have to save that for another time though. For now, let's talk about the ones with, you know, effort put into them. When I grew to like Mario Kart Super Circuit, the same applied to the race courses that it calls its own. I went from thinking that on average they're okay to actually pretty good. They make the absolute best out of their limitations. That being said, there's still a couple of stinkers.
This is the most obnoxious thing I've ever experienced in my life.
So, out of the 20 Super Circuit tracks, which one do you think is the worst? Of course it's fucking Snowland, dude. Yeah, I know, it's what everyone picks as the worst. I really thought about the other possible contenders, but I just don't think it's a competition. Snowland is most infamous for its egregious screen shaking when you're on the ice, which is the whole level. Now, how bad this shaking actually is depends on what you're playing on. If it's on a handheld screen, it's not that glaring since the screen is small. It's way more noticeable on a TV, and it's bad. Like, really bad. But it's not the worst course purely because of that. It just adds insult to a track that somehow has so much yet so little going on. There will be split paths and only one of them has an item box set. I'm not really sure what the point of this is. They do this once where the items are on the left path, and then again with the items on the right. And let me tell you, the fact that these two sections look exactly the same fucks with my muscle memory, and I end up skipping the item boxes a lot. It's because this track is so boring, I'm only paying half attention. You can bump into these snowmen and they fall apart, and that's pretty cute, but like, that's all there is to them. Okay, there's apparently penguins on this course. I forget they're even here. They're just spinning around. That's the problem with Snowland. It's a mixture of snow-themed tropes they just throw in here and do fuck all with them. Although I oddly like this long line of coins, it's just satisfying to run through all of them. But at the same time, it's very strange design. Did they just not give a fuck? Well, neither do I playing this, so fair. The name though, Snowland. They got the same genius behind Skyscraper for this name. The name sums it all up. It has no no identity outside of being a snowland. And throw in constant turbulence into the equation, and you have easily the most unlikable course in the base game, and I find that pretty hard to debate. Good news though, that's the only course that got an F, and there aren't that many Ds either. Super Circuit has good courses, what can I say? Number 19, Bowser Castle 1. Not to be confused with Bowser Castle 1, of course. This feels like an easy runner-up for the worst in the base game because, like, what even happens here? When you're one Bowser Castle of 4 in the base game, and then another 3 more as extras, you might as well be a chameleon with all that camouflage. The unnerving environment and banging music track does not fit an easy-peasy course that well. It has the length of a SNES course, but it doesn't have 5 laps to accommodate for that. You'll be out of here in like a minute. It's a washed ending to what is actually a pretty solid mushroom cup. One thing I can give props though is introducing the lava bubbles, which actually requires you to predict where they're going to pop out so you don't sneak right above them when you jump across. It's an interesting track element. Just a shame you barely get to know them before you're done with this uninspired filler. Number 18, Mario Circuit. This one is a nothing sandwich supreme. I know that simplicity is supposed to be a circuit track's whole shtick, but this is meant to be a step up from Peach Circuit, and when I'm significantly more engaged in that track than what's supposed to be the next step, you might have fucked up. I feel as if you're going straight for longer and the turns aren't as consistent, and the whole theming of this course is road and trees. The course icon is really trying its best to make that seem exciting, with those fucking speed lines. That one right path at the end of the dash panel isn't that useful, but kinda cute. It's sort of like a pit stop, an idea that was more realized in the Mario Kart 8 version. That really goes for the 8 version as a whole. I actually really like that version, probably more than most people do. I was that one asshole in the lobbies that always picked it. And going back to the original, yeah, it really just feels like the shell of something interesting, but nothing more than that. Starting off the C tier with Broken Pier. So I was pretty harsh when I covered this in an older video that too many people watched, and that's because I actually didn't play it for the video. Oops. But even now, I still don't think I'm a huge fan. It has some interesting ideas for sure. I've grown to appreciate the core of this track being a broken pier. Like, they took a well-built normal racetrack and punched some holes into it, and there's ramps scattered in unconventional spots, so you have to put caution to the angle that you hit the jump. If that was all to broken pier, it would have been a fun and focused obstacle course. But then they just kept adding more and more sauce until they drowned the food.
Unfortunately, you better stop with that popcorn mess.
There's also these ghost bridges that appear when you stand on them that provide shortcuts. I guess they're cool, but I don't really feel like it when I use them. It's honestly more fun taking the main unstable path than driving straight on these bridges. They're not intrusive to the course though, so their inclusion is whatever. What is intrusive, however, are these boos. Fuck these boos. Getting enough coins to get the extra tracks is hard enough. I don't need these shitheads taking a bunch of them away. The pseudo 3D presentation of Super Circuit makes it difficult to know where they actually are. It feels like they put too many ideas into one course with not much cohesion or relation between them. It's just the way these extra features are implemented that just don't leave an impression on me. And at this point, the spooky boardwalk theming has been milked dry. I just don't care for the presentation at all. I like what they were going for with the core track design, so it's a bummer I don't like the additional stuff and have to rate it this low. It could definitely benefit from a remake. Number 16, Bowser Castle 2. Thankfully, this Bowser Castle 2 doesn't activate my fight or flight when it gets mentioned, but it's got a similar problem with Broken Pier from being all over the place. Lots of segments feel like they just threw a bunch of shit inside a box. On the other hand though, also like Broken Pier, the disorienting feeling of the course opens up room for experimenting on what you believe is the most optimal path. I kinda like the section where there's all these ramps. You need to analyze the length of the lava pit and decide whether you'll be able to make it across normally or if you'll need a mushroom to get the extra distance. There's also this one dash panel you have to make sure you use from the right angle so you don't run into parts of this wall that don't have guardrails. There's a lot of pre-calculations involved in this track, it's kinda cool. Even though this course is also too busy with different mechanics, I think they have somewhat better chemistry with each other. But it's still kind of bloated at the end of the day, and it's harder for it to really stand out when you're a Bowser Castle and Super Circuit. A fair challenge all things considered, but the execution for each of its challenges vary. With all these jumps, it would benefit a lot from a modern game that has a trick system, but it's been avoiding those games like the plague. Even its most recent appearance in Tour has an automatic trick system. You got a free Bowser Castle too. Let him do tricks. Number 15, Yoshi Desert. The first of many desert courses of this archetype. Everyone's favorite. But you know what? This one's actually actually kinda interesting. First I want to address the Yoshi Sphinx. Love that. I like this one box where you need to jump inside to grab the coins. I think it's funny that they had to make the coins orange in this level, so they wouldn't blend into the sand. I think they should have kept them yellow. It would have been annoying, but mad funny. There's also this cool shortcut off the side of the oasis. It's a pretty hidden shortcut and hard to pull off properly. And overall, the turns don't feel all that bad. What holds it back for me is that, unsurprisingly, I don't care for the theme, not really a desert guy, and these piranha plants in the quicksand. They hurt the soul. Even when I stop running into them, I'll pass by them and think to myself, oh, those fucking assholes. Yoshi Desert is okay. I really wish Mario Kart World went with this instead of Desert Hills. You know, you could have been able to drive up to the Yoshi Sphinx and maybe the course wouldn't be ass. Number 14, Peach Circuit. I'm not gonna lie, I think this is on the higher end of beginning tracks in the series. Sure, the environment feels a bit bare bones, just being a grass field, but I think the peach trees are a cute touch. You might think they're oranges, but believe it or not, peaches can actually be orange. Tune in next video for more fruit facts. The circuit looks very basic at a first glance, but it's surprisingly engaging. It immediately starts with a decently sharp left and then goes into this wavy part and continues to have some fairly stimulating turns. It's nothing crazy, but I much prefer this type of beginner track over an oval or figure 8. This is pretty effective at warming the player up for a Mario Kart game that's a lot more demanding of your skills.
Hey there, dog. What's up?
Number 13, Cheep Cheep Island. This course switches between narrow boardwalk sections and wider beach sections. This serves to ease the tension every now and then. It is a tropical, relaxing setting after all. You don't need to be stressed out the whole time trying to avoid plunging into the ocean. It's nice to have parts where you can blast through the sand with some mushrooms. I find this one split path pretty interesting, where you're choosing between an item or some coins. What holds this one back for me is that it's not very good on the eyes. The big Cheep Cheeps moving around in the distance is a cool touch, but I find it kinda distracting. And the course being dominantly orange and yellow kinda strains my eyes. I don't know who else has this problem. Maybe I just need glasses. And not the cool kind. The nerd kind. Oh man, Lakeside Park really feels like the Choco Mound of this game, where it has all the right pieces to cook up something delicious, but then some other chef came into the kitchen and did some weird shit.
What is he doing?
The road is all twisty and turny, it feels great, and it's such a strong opening to the Special Cup in that regard. And it's staged like one very well, with a distant volcano erupting and firing lava rocks into the ground. The sky even grows dark once it erupts, it's really cool. I used to think the rocks were the most annoying shit, but they become more predictable if you pay attention to the dark spots on the ground. I still think they're kinda annoying, but I can at least pass it off as a me problem. But of course, there is one part that grinds my gears, rustles my feathers, shreds my balls, and it's where the Choco Mound similarities make more sense. Because this course also thinks it's so fucking funny for having a ramp at the edge of a turn that pushes you back 15 seconds, easily dropping you from first to last place because of one goof up. I want it to be clear that I stopped falling for this a long time ago, but that doesn't mean you just pretend it isn't shit. I know it is a Special Cup track, but there are healthier ways to add stakes than Sisyphus. It's just very tacky. How I would fix this is that you can keep the ramp, but have it lead into the lake, so that you still get punished by waiting for Lakitu to fish you out. It's still a setback, but only as much as it needs to be. Lakitu will then drop you off somewhere before that jump, so the player gets excused for now, but the player will now know that they need to turn better in the next lap without needing to start over. It'll help put the player in the right headspace, and messing up will still give you a fighting chance in the race instead of having to quit. When it comes to adding high stakes in a race course, it's important to give the player enough room for redemption when they mess up. Getting the death sentence because of one fart is just annoying. That simple. But what makes this course such an enigma to me is that it immediately follows up with some of the coolest shit in the whole game. After getting launched by this big jump, there's another piece of a ramp on the far right corner that lets you take a huge cut on the map, and I love how it feels when you can seamlessly maintain your momentum. Lakeside Park definitely understood the assignment, to be the gatekeeper that only allows the pro gamers in. But again, it feels like there were two cooks in the kitchen, and one of them was brewing some suspicious stew. Number 11, Boo Lake. So the name is false advertising. The Boos have a lake like LA has a river. That was one of many reasons why I didn't care for it, but with more time, I actually kinda like it now. It's a minor thing, but I like how the sky gets darker throughout the race, and I prefer the Boos staying in their lane holding up some candles, instead of needing me to call an adult. Wait, I am an adult. Bullshit. This is generally well built for a fun race, like this fork in the road that you can cut through the middle with enough speed. I think I used to not like it before because nothing about it was impressive, but that doesn't mean it can't be good. And I'm glad they got that drought situation handled in the future. unlike the LA River. Number 10, Shy Guy Beach. This is a great second level. It has plenty of open space with just the right amount of hazards. The sidesteppers are good novice hazards, since they simply move left and right, but they still require the player to predict their movement. It also reminds me a lot of Koopa Beach 1 with hopping over the water. The Shy Guy pirate ship gives the course a lot of personality, but its role in the actual race course is pretty lackluster. They're supposed to fire cannonballs onto the beach, but like, I barely even see the cannonballs, let alone hit them. I don't expect to be under constant fire in the second level, but maybe the hostility of a pirate ship just wouldn't be fitting in the first place. I mean, I'd be fine if it was just a background element, but as it is, it's not intrusive, so it's not a big deal, just a bit of missed potential. Number 9, Sunset Wilds. This is one of the most iconic tracks in Super Circuit, but honestly, it's mostly because of its personality rather than being a super engaging race. It seems to be inspired by the old American Southwest, and the theme goes perfect with the main gimmick, which is that after every lap, time passes by and the sun gets lower. All the different skybox colors complement the desert really well, and the transitions look so smooth. In Mario Kart Tour, it's a lot more cartoony, and I really like it there too. And in 8 Deluxe, well, it just doesn't happen. Surely, it's because the game engine was unable to simulate a day-night cycle, right?
Nah, they just fucked up.
Its second most popular trait are the Shy Guys that latch onto your car and steal your coins if you run into their tents. They have some controversy behind them of how they were originally styled after Native American stereotypes, but it was removed in later versions. Man, I can't believe Nintendo went woke. And Jamboree TV, when Luigi said his pronouns are he, they, I threw my Switch at the wall. I like how their tents are positioned within all these dash panels. It has you be more cautious with your steering while being at high speeds. The rest of the actual course is, while still good, it doesn't quite hold up to the atmosphere. The turns are fine. This one part where you need to hop over bumps for speed boost is kinda neat, but that's about it. So it's going to be kept right out of the gates of A tier, since those courses I believe to be great in basically all respects. Also, yeah, there's 8 of these that got an A or higher. That's pretty sick. Starting with Bowser Castle 3. For what's yet another Bowser Castle in Super Circuit, it does an excellent job sticking out from the bunch. Instead of red and orange castle halls of the rest, this one takes place outdoors under the stormy sky, complemented perfectly with the blue tile set. It's pretty stressful the whole way through, whether it's the contained paved areas where shells can ricochet, or the grates over the lava where you need to drift cautiously so you don't burn alive. This item box is in a delightfully devilish spot. If you come in at a bad time, you will get denied by that thwomp. But the ending straightaway has to be my favorite part. All those pockets on the edges make it so that one bonk is life or death, and the cherry on top is the detail of Kamek flying around at the end. And let me just say, the course icon might be the hardest shit. Feel free to screenshot. There's still one Bowser Castle in this game that remains superior, but this is well deserving to be iconic. It also helps that it reappeared in Wii, so it's likely the most iconic one to younger fans like myself. And then it came back again in Tour, but it just looks like the other Bowser Castles. You know, maybe they just didn't have enough storage for the new assets in the game that constantly updates with new assets.
Nah, they just fucked up.
Number 7, Riverside Park. This reminds me a lot of Koopa Troopa Beach from 64, where it's amazing by Mushroom Cup standards. It has a high skill ceiling despite being an early track. It's also similar with having a ballsy shortcut across the water. The appeal to this is really simple, just how fun these turns are. One look at that minimap and I start rubbing my hands. It has everything, 90 degrees, hairpins, even a 270 at the very end that leads into a jump. You wouldn't expect the game to have this much so early on, but I'm really happy they did. Really lets you know that Super Circuit is not for the faint of heart. Or maybe it is because the game is for old people. Number 6, Cheeseland. Yeah, this one speaks for itself. Any ideas you could get out of a land of cheese, it's here. There's mice that zip across the road. I really love the one that sneaks around in the opening like a little scheming schemer up to no good. The background is really pretty and gives off the feeling we're on an alien planet. Or we could be on the moon if it's playing off the whole the moon is made of cheese thing. The music slaps too, not far behind Bowser Castle and Sky Garden as my favorite. It seems like a slam dunk, but there are some parts that kind of feel sloppy, specifically these jumps with the dash panels behind them. If you take the jump on the edges and miss the boost, you won't have enough speed for the jump and have to redo part of the race. I know it's easy to prevent that from happening, but I don't think that should be a thing that could happen in the first place. It is a rare occurrence, but if it does happen, it puts me in a shit mood. But that's really all I have to critique. Even with that, you are left with one of the most creative Mario Kart courses ever. Number 5, we have Ribbon Road. This is such a fun and creative theme. We're racing along a giant present ribbon. The road is fairly simple and straightforward, but there's a lot of tiny dash panels that you can try to hit, as well as the batches of coins if you're aiming for unlocking the extra cups. When you manage to chain one dash panel after another and you make the CPUs eat shit, it feels great. It's fairly easy to play the normal way, but it takes a fair amount of practice to optimize. It's a feel-good course from any angle. If it's casual and you just want to take in the playful music and environment, or if it's exhilarating trying to maintain your high-speed momentum. Though I am curious what's actually inside all these presents. I like to believe it's all the toys and dioramas in the remake, so it kinda tells a story between the two versions. Or these could all be for a grown-ass man and it's like filled with cans of beer. And in fourth, we have Luigi Circuit. In my opinion, one of, if not the best circuit in the series. I know, what an achievement. I swear it's better than it sounds. I adore the rainy weather, in what seems to be some sort of airfield judging by the Luigi blimp, that if you pay close attention, actually takes off in the middle of the race, into the skies, maybe over a garden. Could you imagine? Circuits tend to be very generic and straightforward in their tone, just your typical bouncy, sunny racing atmosphere, so it's refreshing to have one that's more gloomy. And that's layered over a racetrack that is overall pretty fun from start to finish. Given it's the third circuit, it allows itself to be the gateway to the more challenging half of the game. You got plenty of curves and sharper turns, and the road being slippery due to the rain adds a whole other layer of trickiness, as well as those puddles you can try to hop over, really just for fun. I always look forward to a round at Luigi Circuit, and it should have been a bigger inspiration to circuits in the future, but instead they choose to do the same dry, broad daylight milquetoast shit over and over. Its theming and track layout far excel the expectations for a circuit track and makes for a really fun course on its own. And with that, we have reached the top 3, all of which have achieved the goated status of S tier. If treading through all of these Bowser Castles meant building up to Bowser Castle 4, I'd say it's worth it. This one is so goated. It's an incredible endgame gauntlet full of sharp turns and divisions in the road. Every part of the track has a different flavor of excitement. You got hopping over to lava pits with good timing, or you could just go around them if you're lame. You got boosting through an extremely cramped path for an item box. The thwomps are moving, that's when you know shit is real. You got Mecha Koopas that, while they simply move left and right, having you move diagonally makes it harder to weave around them. I'm pretty sure it's also the longest course in the game, and it really fits for this ultimate test of your go-karting before the Rainbow Road finale. The background being this giant pulsating bomb is also very menacing. It's like we're in the core of Bowser's castle. I think this jump before the Mecha Koopas could have felt a bit more climactic, something more like Lakeside Park, but those small things barely bog down what is a fantastic Bowser castle. And while I'm here, I gotta mention the tour version. Adding even more dangerous shit in this entire wall is in debris like the bomb just blew up, that makes it one of my favorite course remakes ever from how it tells a story between the two. Sure glad you can only play it for 4 weeks every year. Oh well, I'm still having a blast with the original version. I can play whenever I want. And in second place, if there's any racetrack that is whimsy incarnate, it's Sky Garden. Everything about this just feels so contagiously optimistic, from the enchanting setting of a beanstalk garden to the music making you feel like the sky's the limit. And it's this optimism that really fuels the player into doing some real tricky shortcuts. There's a cut through the clouds where you not only need a mushroom, but also have to hop in between the gaps. And here we have both a small jump if you want to play it safe, or take a bigger one right next to it, but you have to make sure you carefully land onto this vine bridge. And pulling off all these wild tricks adds even more to that optimistic atmosphere, making you feel really proud of what you just did. This is just one of the most feel-good tracks ever. I feel like it needs to be restated how much I absolutely love the music. You don't even need to play the course to get into a cheery mood, just listen to the music. I will say, as someone who's been playing DS for a lot longer, my love for this course definitely stems from its appearance in that game. But I'm really glad to have experienced its roots. It's just as fantastic here. This would be the perfect segue to shit on more remakes, but let's not, because now, as we get to number 1, I want to get to talking about a genuine masterpiece of a racing game level that I wish I discovered a long time ago. Guys, get Super Circuit just so you can play its Rainbow Road. I shit you not, this is at least in the top 5 of the whole series. Some of you might raise an eyebrow, and I get it, I wasn't on board either the first time. I just thought it had an interesting gimmick that made for a pretty fun course, and that's it. But man, this is not something you play only once, or even a handful of times. You play this over and over again just from how addicting and rewarding it is to master. Those feelings you get from Sky Garden are amplified like 10 times here. The kick of this Rainbow Road is that the edges are lined up with ramps. At first, it's gonna gonna make you feel even more cramped and pressured to stay on the track, when their purpose is actually the complete opposite. For the more dauntless players, you can pull off some of the most ballsy techniques in a racing game. The shortcuts these ramps open up can be anywhere between small cuts through corners to leaping over half of the goddamn course. You can finish a lap in less than 15 seconds. What the fuck? It's not easy to pull off the larger cuts, but when you stick the landing, the dopamine is off the charts. My favorite part has to be going off that one path with all the speed boost and launching yourself off to the right at just the right angle. And failing these jumps feels so miserable yet so deserved. And that's but one of so many different opportunities. The genius of this Rainbow Road is that the actual road is merely a suggestion. Your racing map could look like this, but it could also look like this, or even this. You create your own path around the actual road. It's so brilliant. I look at the speedruns and hope that one day I can pull this off myself. That'll never happen, but I'm still proud of what I can do here. Even for those who want to play it straightforward, there's still some things that keep you on your toes, like the thunderclouds that shrink you down, and the shooting stars that can catch you off guard. This is a course that is entirely what you make of it. The stakes are only as high as you want them to be, and I'm starting to think I was a bit too harsh on the music. It's no 64, Wii, or 3DS Rainbow Road music, but I still think it's really effective at sounding like you've reached new heights as a player. And the icing on the cake? Peak Fiction is mentioned. Nothing compares to the way Super Circuit's Rainbow Road makes the race entirely your own, playing by your own rules. It's the best course in this game by a considerable margin, and is one of the most intuitive race courses in the whole series. I cannot wait for them to fuck this up in a remake. Rainbow Road, in a way, is a summation about how I feel about Super Circuit as a whole. At first, it feels like you're gonna get kicked into the ground from every tiny misstep, and can feel really discouraging. But when you really put in the work, fine-tune your way around that steering wheel, you learn how to break apart each of these racetracks. You can go from the game overwhelming you, to you overwhelming the game. And unlike Super Mario Kart or Mario Kart 64, there's very few bullshit that gets in your way. And with the items being a lot more tame compared to the chaos of modern Mario Kart, there's something novel about having a Mario Kart that's a lot more skill-based. This game is very much overlooked, but make no mistake, it's not some unspoken masterpiece. On rare occasions, the game just says, fuck you. The CPUs are still a mild annoyance. Everything surrounding the extra tracks are kinda icky, despite the unlocking method being fun. And in general, this game doesn't really make as big of an impact as other Mario Karts have, with having no new characters or items and such. It does make a difference in the smaller mechanics like the red shell AI, and that's very much appreciated. At the same time though, I don't think it needs to be impactful in order to be good. Sure, this can be boiled down to just being vanilla Mario Kart, but to be a Mario Kart is to be a damn good time. This makes it easy for a lot of people to not give Super Circuit much attention, especially when this game might not be the best at first impressions. It's not the type of game that will hook you immediately, but it is definitely worth the practice and patience. You might come to the same conclusion that Super Circuit is a fairly simple but pretty good entry in the series. And to show you how important it is that you let it cook, this is what the score would look like based on my early impressions. I always grouped the first 3 games together as the sort of rocky start of the series, and Double Dash was the first where the wheel really started rolling. But it turns out that it was Super Circuit that started to shape the series into its greater self, and it deserves way more credit. With all that said, Double Dash does curb stomp Super Circuit, but that's for another time. Your homework is to go try out some Super Circuit. If you got the online expansion pass, it's right there for you. But personally, I would... Oh, he's asleep. Look into homebrewing your 3DS and download it from the 8 shop. This thing is infamous for being really easy to mod. I got confused, so my sister did it for me.